What's up, folks? Welcome back to the Stupid Fans Club. I am your host, Shaan Donn, and welcome to the club. Listen, this past weekend was all about college football. Oh my goodness. Like, are you kidding me? That was an incredible weekend, and no shade to the NFL, no shade to any other sports, but college football is one of the most electrifying sports in the world. That past weekend was just filled with unbelievable games. And I know that there's a lot of like regions still in the country that don't watch it, don't know much about it, but that sucks for them. I mean, college football, the state of college football as a product. I know we have the NIL and the transfer portal and all that great stuff, but the product is the best it's ever been. I mean, these games are super exciting. And I always tell people, like, that college environment is just different. It is the NFL is no match to it. Maybe, probably soccer, like overseas or something, like that type of environment, that electricity, that amount of people. I mean, any given Saturday, you could be playing in front of 100,000 people. And these are 18, 19, 20 plus year olds. Like, it's absolutely unbelievable. And I was just proud to be a fan at the end of the day. So this is mostly a college football show this week. I mean, we'll touch on some NFL stuff and some NBA news here, but listen, I enjoyed myself this past weekend to an extent. As you can see from behind me, I am a Georgia fan, so that was interesting. But yeah, there's no other place to start than with the Georgia Alabama game. This game needs no hype already. Like, by itself, the hype around it is through the roof. So for the game to surpass the hype, it shows you how good that game actually was. I guess let's start with the first half. That was the worst half of football I've ever seen Georgia play. I mean, from the offensive side to the defensive side, the defense looked like they had no shot of stopping Jalen Milroe. From the very beginning to the end of the second half, it just looked like there was no shot. And then you had the Alabama defense playing with their ears pinned back. It looked like we couldn't get anything to go through. It just was a full debacle for Georgia there. So one of the issues I had with the offense is those first couple of drives with Alabama, you saw, and I think they got the ball first too, you saw how dominant they were and how the defense just, I mean, they were just get into those edges and running. I mean, it seemed like every play was a big play. And so if I'm on the offensive side, I would much rather us implement the run much more and try to maybe slow that pace down to, one, give your defense some rest, and two, limit Alabama's possessions. Because if you're concerned, I mean, it didn't take very long to see that there was some concern on that defensive side, and Jalen Milroe was just having a field day. So let's keep the ball out of his hands as much as possible, make sure our defense is rested, and try to put together some drives. The thing with passing is it's such a 50-50 thing almost every time, unless you're, and the way they were playing, even the short screen passes, the easy passes seem to not be working. And so I think you kind of got to just calm down. You're on the road, slow the pace. Let's get to we have a strong running back with Trevor Etienne. I think just slow the pace a little bit, get some yards. So now you're not sitting at third and 10, you're sitting at third and 4, third and 5 on down is a lot better than on the road with 100,000 fans screaming and Alabama sending an all out blitz just to, it just looked like it was going all bad. So I would have much rather them run the ball a little more and maybe try to slow that pace down. Instead, Georgia came out gunning, throwing the ball, and they were testing those young that young secondary, and there wasn't much happening there. So I think we had one drive in the first half where we put it together and were able to score. But other than that, that was the only highlight of the half. And then the second half, I remember it getting, when Georgia got 15, I don't remember what the exact score was, maybe 28-15. Defense was playing much better. I mean, it was night and day in that second half with the defense. Defense was shutting it down. They weren't letting them get to those edges. Jalen Milroe looked very much contained, and the defense started looking like Georgia's defense. And then Carson Beck started to look a little more like Carson Beck. And 28-15 is where it started to say, like, I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much, but I'm like, this is a one possession football game. And so that's where, you felt the momentum start to change. And again, Georgia's defense was playing well. I think we had another drive there where Carson Beck fumbled, and our defense was still able to hold Alabama to just a field goal there. And eventually Georgia came back and tied it all the way up, took the lead. We got the score we needed, and we ended up taking the lead with that electrifying pass to Dylan Bell, who I love so much, man. He's so electric. And that is when everybody is going nuts. I am screaming at the top of my lungs. I am just like, oh my gosh, we've come back, and it's 2 minutes left in the game. I'm thinking, man, this is a big defensive possession. Besides that field goal which we gave to them with the Carson Beck fumble, I'm thinking, we stopped them here? Oh man, we could close this game out and sneak out with a win in the most historical college football comeback of all time. I am like, oh my gosh. But I am also aware that we're only up by like a point. So let's see. And it didn't take very long. It didn't take long at all. One play, we've all seen it. Bomb pass down to Ryan Williams, and he did his thing after that. There's not much to say about it. It is so interesting with Alabama. Obviously, their two star players are Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams, who I just still can't believe he's a 17-year-old doing this. I feel that they have this rawness to their game. I described it as like backyard football. Like, they are just super athletic, and obviously they have the fundamentals here and there, but it's their raw talent. Like, Jalen Milroe's just electrifying speed. Ryan Williams, just innate creativity and shiftiness, agility to kind of make that catch and stop on the dime and spin. And it was just like, this is how like we play in the backyard. So that was something that stood out to me, just kind of their rawness and just innate ability to kind of make plays. When he makes that play, I'm thinking, okay, we still have 2 minutes, and our offense has been unbelievable in the second half. So I'm saddened by the play, but I know that we still have time, and it's not over. So our offense did exactly what they continued, or what they've been doing previously. They go all the way down the field. We get to the red zone. It is 1st and 10. And again, we've seen the play. I don't know if he was trying to get a back shoulder or what, but Carson Beck throws it up, kind of a 50-50 ball to Kobe Young, and it gets picked off. And I watched that play a bunch of times. I just don't think that Kobe Young saw the pass when it was in the air. When you look at the play, the ball is in midair, and Kobe Young is still running towards the back of the end zone. But the DB immediately saw the ball out of Carson Beck's hands. And so Kobe Young sees the DB stop, like he was just a second late on every reaction, and he wasn't even able to contest the pass really. Because in that situation, you tackle the DB. You get a pass interference call and live to fight another down. But I just don't think he saw it quick enough, and interception and that sealed the deal there. It was heartbreaking right there. I mean, to come all the way back to make this a game, and then to get into the red zone there with a chance to have a walk-off touchdown win, because I honestly think Kirby goes for 2 if we get in that end zone. I think you put all your chips on the table, get that 2-point conversion, and go home with the win. But he threw a pick, and in the moment I was furious. I didn't understand why Carson Beck made the pass. I didn't understand why the receiver didn't contest, but obviously just within the passion of watching the game. So as a Georgia fan, I am upset, of course, that we lost, but it's hard not to be a little proud about what we did and were able to accomplish with that comeback. 28 down in the first quarter. I mean, this was embarrassing. It was looking like it was getting ready to be 70-10 or something crazy as the final score, because I mean, there was just no sign of Georgia giving any resistance to Alabama and Jalen Milroe, and we fought all the way back. It was absolutely unbelievable. Where does Carson Beck go from here? This was the best and worst game I've ever seen from Carson Beck. Throughout the whole game, he just made some terrible plays. He looked rattled. He looked unprepared for the moment. He was making the wrong reads, making poor decisions. I mean, everything you don't want a quarterback to do, he did. He threw 3 picks and was responsible for a fumble that gave Alabama an additional 3 points, and threw the game-sealing interception. But in the moment, I'm thinking, man, I hate that he threw that pick, but we're not even here if it wasn't for how great he played. Georgia was 5 for 5, 6 for 6, something like that on 4th down conversions. I mean, when we needed it the most, before we even get to the pick, to even get down the field, to have a chance, an opportunity to take a shot at the end zone, to answer the question of where does Carson Beck go from here, I feel like, and my hope would be, that this gives him that swagger of, I'm Carson Beck. You guys remember the Kevin Durant thing? Like, I'm Kevin Durant. I hope this gives him that swagger and that confidence. Because, yes, you looked rattled and you looked uncertain for a majority of the game. But in the biggest moment, in the biggest environment on the road, you led your team all the way back, making big play after big play after big play. If you can do that in Alabama, in that type of primetime game, 100,000 people watching, you can't tell me that. Who else is there? What else is going to shake you? That was a playoff environment. That was a championship environment. Hostile environment, really, because at least in the championship, you get a neutral site. I hope this gives him the confidence that he needs to play like that number 1 draft pick that he was expected to be coming out of this season. That Heisman candidate that everybody was expecting from him in this season. For the majority of that game, he looked like neither. But by the end of the game, I felt like he grew up. And you know what they say? You learn more from losses than you do from wins. So I think this is strangely a positive for Georgia and Carson Beck here. And I think this is gonna wake him up. And I hope we see a mean, locked in Carson Beck that we saw in that second half. So that's my hope there. And then for Georgia as a team, we're coming off of the 1-point win against Kentucky. And then we had the bye week. And then we play Alabama and looked inferior. Much more inferior. And then we look like Georgia again. We have Auburn this weekend. And, you know, they're coming off of a close game against a ranked team, Oklahoma. And Auburn always typically plays us tough. But I think that, again, big loss, but the resilience and just what it takes to even come back and be competitive in a game like that, I feel like that's going to give this team a boost of momentum and, again, a confidence and a swagger of, like, we're Georgia. Y'all got to come see us, not the other way around. I feel like Georgia played with a kind of a timidness, like ooh, we're number one. Let's see if we can sneak out of here with a win. Let's just play good enough. And you saw how Alabama came out. They came out like, man, in the pregame, they over there clowning on Georgia. They over there with and these are freshmen. These guys, most of their team don't have this just laundry list of experience on the college level or big games like that. They look more confident than ever. And Georgia came out like, ooh, let's see if we can compete. Well, we were the favorites. And so that is my hope for, we talked about Carson Beck, but Georgia as a whole team. I hope this gives us that momentum boost that we need and we start playing like that number in front of me, number one, even though we're no longer number one. But I hope we start just playing like that. So I do think, again, a close loss, heartbreaking loss, but I think this will be a good boost for us. And then who's going to beat Bama? Let's actually take a look at their schedule. They look serious. They look like a tough opponent. And again, they did give up the big lead, but they have some electrifying players on that team. So they had the Georgia game. They're past that. And they have the Vanderbilt game coming up. I think both of these teams do have trap games here. Alabama at Vanderbilt coming off that type of win, getting all the praise that you can get. Who cares about Vanderbilt? We come in here and stomp them year in and year out. But Vanderbilt is a 2-2 team this year. And again, not suggesting that they'll beat or even compete with Alabama, but Alabama has to come in there ready to play a football game. And same for Georgia. We have Auburn at home. You don't want that heartbreak hangover to go into the next game. You want to come in there focused and with a dominant mindset for that game. So they have Vandy next. Then South Carolina, tough team. South Carolina does play them in Alabama, but tough team. And then they got another big matchup against Tennessee at Tennessee. So they'll have their fun with the road test there, and really their first legitimate road test That'll be a fun game. And if I'm not mistaken, that's on October 19th. When does Georgia play Texas? October 19th. Yeah, I think this was the weekend everyone was talking about, like I'll miss my wedding for. Yeah, that I see. So yeah, this is Tennessee could definitely compete. Unsure about Missouri. They've looked up and down a little bit, but again, number nine ranked team in the country. They could beat them. Uh, and of course their LSU game should be fun at LSU, and then Oklahoma later in the season in the Auburn game. Um, so they have some tough matchups, but if they're playing like they played in that first half, good luck anybody beating them. We'll get to the polls, but I think they look like the best team in the country, and they have all the weapons, specifically Ryan Williams, that you can ask for, and Jalen Milroe just shows why it's so difficult to play against him. He's such a running threat, and he has a respectable arm, and so it's just he's a tough matchup. He gives headaches to teams, and just a very tough beat. So yes, that was hands down game of the year. Again, my team was on the losing side, but I can take myself out of it and look at it for what it was. Classic. I mean, we're talking about Texas USC, Vince Young, Reggie Bush type of type of game here. This will go down in history. And don't be surprised if these two teams see each other again in that college football playoff. I do believe that they'll still both end up making it, and we'll see how it plays out. So that was game of the year, Georgia, Bama. So then naturally you think, all right, everybody else, there was nothing else after that game. Who else was on the list? And even I looked at the schedule and said, oh man, this scheduling is made to focus in on Georgia, Bama. But man, unbelievable games. Ole Miss and Kentucky. Who saw it coming? Who saw it coming? And so let me tell you kind of how my mindset went for this game. I'm over there rooting for Kentucky because I wanted, Georgia had the 1 point win and then the bye week. So for 2 weeks straight, we've heard nothing but how Georgia's only had a 1 point win against an unranked Kentucky who got killed by South Carolina at home. Is Georgia really good? Oh, they're setting themselves up against big old bad Alabama. And it was interesting because coming into the game, the Georgia was by the numbers the favorite by about 2 points. But when you would hear everybody talk, it was Alabama. Oh, Alabama has this, Alabama has that. And part of the reason is because Georgia just hasn't shown anything. Like they don't have this standout receiver like Alabama does. They don't have a Carson Beck. He hasn't just wowed yet. He's played fine games, but he hasn't electrified like a Jalen Milroe. And so I'm hoping Kentucky competes against number 6 Ole Miss in Ole Miss, so people can see like, oh no, Kentucky is actually a good team. So I'm just hoping they're competing. And as I'm watching the game, I'm like, Kentucky's hanging around here and they're stopping them. And it was interesting. So beginning of the game, Ole Miss goes right down the field, scores a touchdown, looks like typical Ole Miss. And I think people were expecting a blowout here and a bit of separation from Ole Miss in Kentucky because of play styles. Georgia is a run down your throat type of team that Kentucky is as well. And they feel like they can match up with anybody on that front line. And so when Kentucky is having success running the ball, and then after that first drive from Ole Miss, they're stopping them. It's getting later and later in the game. I was just like, wow, they're really doing this. Kentucky is a very very tough team, even though they had two losses. And so here it is, game on the line. It is 4th and 7, and Ole Miss puts all their chips on the table and goes from their own 20-yard line. I believe they were down 17-13 at the time, and they go for it all. And what do you know? Brock Vandagriff throws a bomb to Barrion Brown. One-on-one coverage. Barrion Brown makes a big play, big catch, gets big yards on it. I thought he might take it all the way to the house. Gets them in the red zone, and Kentucky is able to punch it in. Now, there was a scare where they punched it in and the ball got punched out right before they crossed the goal line, but Kentucky was able to recover it for a touchdown. So unbelievable play there and an unbelievable call. 4th and 7 on your own 20. Again, I mean, you're conceding the game there, or you're going all in. You know that if you don't make that, they're right there. And if you don't hold them to a field goal at least, which would be very difficult to do, it's ball game. So I thought that was a gutsy call, and it paid off. And Ole Miss ends up losing off of a missed field goal. They had the opportunity to tie it, but the field goal kicker couldn't make it. Is there concern for Ole Miss here after that loss? I would say yes and no. I think Kentucky is probably now on people's radar. Maybe it was a fluke game. Maybe it's just, sometimes you get these bad matchups with teams. Maybe South Carolina is just their kryptonite, and they don't match up well with them. Maybe it was just an early season game, but I think Kentucky has everyone's attention now, and they're on everyone's radar as they are one of those teams that aren't going to be ranked, but they are an SEC football team who you better come up ready to play. And with it's interesting because it's not like their offense has this crazy fluidity to it. They have a strong defense, and you're going to have a hard time scoring on them. And they run the ball so well. It's just smash mouth football. But Vandagriff it's not like how it felt against that Oklahoma Tennessee game where it just seemed like Oklahoma was incapable of throwing the football. It is Brock Vandagriff can make a pass. He can make a big play, and he can do it with his feet, which is what he prefers to do, but he can also drop back and make a big play. So they are a scary team, and they proved it. Ole Miss, it was strange. It wasn't anything, oh man, get out of here. Near home run there by Jorge Soler. It's not like they just did a bunch of stuff wrong, really. It was just they were playing a good team. And I still think Ole Miss is a good team, but I do think this is kind of what we see and have come to expect from Ole Miss over the years. It's just that team that's in the second tier. It's kind of like you have your Bamas, Ohio States, your Georgias, and it's like, oh yeah, and then like Ole Miss and everybody, this is why they're not in the elite. They are a strong team and competitive team in this Lane Kiffin era. But I think games like this is where it's like, yeah, they're good, but so I think there is some concern there for Ole Miss, but also think Kentucky's just a darn good football team and is probably underrated and overlooked, but likely not anymore. Teams are going to come in expecting and ready to play Kentucky. And I think it was just just a bad matchup for Ole Miss. Like, that's smash mouth football. They're more physical of a team, and they're not afraid. And by the way, they just took the number one team down, or lost to them by 1 point and hung with them all the way through. So they're not lacking any confidence. And then you place them on your for your homecoming game. So man, that was just a rough matchup for them. But Ole Miss Kentucky, unbelievable upset there. Kentucky is a scary team, and we'll see how Ole Miss responds here. And the other big one from this week was the Miami Virginia Tech game. This was interesting because unlike the Kentucky and Ole Miss game, it wasn't a late lead takeover by the underdog. It was a late lead takeover by the overdog. Miami was losing to Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech started creating some difference, or some distance. So Miami opens up the game with a fumble and a Virginia Tech recovery, and Virginia Tech was able to score in 3 plays. Again, I always talk about setting the tone, especially as an underdog. When you come out and have that type of play at the beginning of the game, you show yourself that you can play with them, and you also show the other team, like, oh, okay, we're not playing Tennessee Tech or somebody. It's we're gonna have to come up here and show up. Miami then gets the ball, go down the field, score a touchdown. They get the ball again, go down the field, score a touchdown. And then they get the ball again. And they are knocking on the door. But Cam Ward throws a pick right at the goal line. And instead of going up 21-7, it is now a tie ball game, 14-14. And Virginia Tech from that point on just pretty much imposed their will. Tootin from Virginia Tech, number 33, their running back, had his way all game. He was the big time playmaker for them. He was running right through that Miami defense, and had 19 carries for 141 yards. He was definitely one of the highlight players for them throughout that entire game. He looked fantastic. 27-17 ball game. Virginia Tech opts to go for a fake field goal. In the moment, it wasn't something that it was like, oh, they may fake it here. It was like you just assumed they were going to take the field goal. And I guess you can say, when do you ever expect a fake field goal? Or, it's like the element of surprise is the point. But I just thought of the risk reward factor there. I mean, I'm guessing they're thinking we don't convert, we're still up 2 possessions. If we do convert and keep our drive going, we can go up 34-17. And what it seemed to do was actually inflate the momentum for Miami, and that shifted the momentum all the way. Miami just scored on all of their last 3 drives, and Virginia Tech scored one more time. And so that type of play call and not getting it it has a tendency of just taking out or zapping out that momentum from you. I always felt like there were little plays and little things you want to stay away from unless you absolutely need it in that moment. And of course, take your risk here, but little things like getting a touchdown and then getting stopped or stumped on the 2-point conversion or something, or missing the extra point. Those things can just take a little bit of the momentum out of the building or just out of your team. And if you don't need it, and it's the risk isn't worth the reward, then I think you should stay away from it, because momentum is a big thing in sports, as we all know. look at Georgia's comeback. So Miami comes all the way back. Again, scores on their last three drives, and the final play. I'm sure we've all seen it, heard about it. That was just insane. And I'm watching this live, and I remember seeing it live and saying, "Where's the ball?" And then you're seeing nobody has made a call yet, so I'm thinking like, "Oh, this is incomplete. This is just everybody's fighting for it and whatever. I'm sure it's hit the ground or not." And I see the Miami player come out of the pile with the ball, and everybody's going crazy. The crowd's going crazy. They shut the lights out. Oh, Miami win. But then you hear the commentator say, "They're calling this a Virginia Tech touchdown." And the Virginia Tech players are now going crazy. And so I'm like, what is going on? Show me this replay ASAP. My friends, after I saw the replay, I had no better idea of who actually caught the ball. And I tell you, on today, I still have no idea who caught that football. It was crazy. And I think for me, it was, how do you call that a touchdown on the field? One. Two, after calling it a touchdown on the field, what did you see in the replay that caused you to overturn it? What conclusive evidence did you see from the replay to cause you to overturn that? You genuinely cannot see the football. And you can't, and if you can zoom in and find where the football is, then it's hard to see who has it. It's just a bunch of hands and clutter. And so I think it would have been controversial either way. That was a unique play. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before. But it was a roller coaster of emotions for both teams in the end. And I couldn't believe it. But I do think that call was flawed from the beginning. I don't think it should have been called a touchdown, but at the same time, you didn't see the ball hit the ground, so it's like, well, I guess somebody caught it in there. But you know, fantastic matchup between those two teams, and I think Virginia Tech, they may have exposed Miami a little bit there. Virginia Tech is kind of like that Kentucky team, 2-2 team, now 2-3, I believe. Someone you may take lightly. They're coming into your house, and they played, and I felt like for the majority of the game they outplayed Miami. But Cam Ward, he just made some unbelievable plays, and when you watch that game, you see why he is at a Heisman, on the Heisman watch. He, made some plays to win them that game, really. And that crazy Xavier Restrepo catch when he's literally on the ground on his back and somehow makes the catch. That was unbelievable to keep the drive going. He's so sure-handed. He's going to be a great receiver in the NFL. He's so sure-handed and one of the best receivers in college football. But Miami's defense didn't look all that scary. Virginia Tech had a field day running the football against them. And Virginia Tech's quarterback had a fine game himself. So, it comes back to my point of, you can't judge these teams off of them playing these majorly inferior opponents. Everybody looks like world beaters when it's a mismatch. Like, when you're not playing anyone yet, you can't tell how good a team really is. It's kind of the Texas thing. Like, Texas is great. They look fantastic. Who have they played yet? Nobody. Oh my gosh, Arch Manning, he's just unbelievable. They're gonna have to see who's gonna start when Quinn Ewers comes back. Let's see when you play somebody. And again, Michigan. Okay, again, Michigan is a fine football team. They're gonna beat some teams with that smash mouth football, but there is just a gap there that Michigan can only do so much. They are genuinely incapable of throwing the football, and Texas is just too good of a team for that on both sides. So let's see when they play Georgia. Let's see when they have some more of these challenging games later in the year, how good they actually are. And I do think they are a darn good football team. But again, we thought Miami, like who thought Virginia Tech was gonna compete with Miami? I'm sure somebody's like, oh yeah, but in the masses, you think, oh, Miami is gonna have their way with that team. So I think that's a reminder for us all. Um, Cam Ward had 2 interceptions, 1 fumble in that game, but he threw for 4 touchdowns too. So he is an amazing player. And again, it was just another highlight of this incredible college football weekend. Um, Miami and Virginia Tech. And then quickly, we have the Colorado UCF game. The last time I checked it before the game, UCF was a 14 and a half, I believe, maybe a 14 and a half point favorite against Colorado. And boy, did that flip. Colorado ends up winning 48-21, I believe. And UCF, I think everyone thought they were, and then again, it's a road game for Colorado. Everyone felt like they were going to have their way with Colorado, and it was the other way around. Colorado or UCF had no answer for Colorado. That running game that they were looking to enforce, it didn't work. Colorado's defense stepped up, and Shador had a fantastic game. Obviously, Travis Hunter had a classic, or obviously Travis Hunter had a fantastic game. Is it time to take Colorado serious now? Listen, all I keep hearing about is how Colorado isn't good enough. Wait until they play a real team. Wait until this happens. Wait until that happens. Waiting for the downfall. We know it's coming. They're not that good. They're just playing bad teams. And you kind of felt that, and you start wondering, is this going to be a repeat of last year? And ever since then, they've looked fantastic. And this here was clearly their best game. Again, I think they have a good defense, and I think they have really good skill position players. And if they get going, good luck. Especially that Travis Hunter and those guys. I mean, if they get going, they are a hard team to stop. And they showed it again this week. So again, people keep doubting, but Colorado just keeps showing up and winning. And I think we're now at a point with Colorado where it's time to see how good they are. Because these games that we keep thinking they're going to lose, or they're going to get blown out, or this is where we're going to see the downfall begin. They keep coming out and winning and playing well. And so coming up this week, they have Kansas State, and it's a home game for them. I don't know. I mean, Kansas State is a ranked team, number 20, ranked higher than the Nebraska team that blew them out. So, and they've looked pretty good this season. So, again, you expect it, but I am now at the point I've seen enough to pause before I just think that, oh yeah, that team is going to take care of Colorado. Let's see. Let's see, because I think they have a better defense than these teams come out there thinking. And they think that their level of, I mean, you got to look, Shedeur Sanders was a highly ranked quarterback coming into college. He just chose to go to Jackson State. He just chose to follow Stat and go to Colorado. Same with Travis Hunter. So you're talking about players who could easily be at Alabama's and Georgia's and Texas, but they just chose to go this route with Coach Prime. And so, these guys, and same for a lot of these guys, it's not, can't play the name of the team. You got to go out there and play the team, the players on that team. And so, hey man, we'll see. Got a tough one again, and I mean the rest of their schedule is tough. But we'll see. Let's see how good they are. But they have the same number of wins they had for the entire year last year. We know they did lose out last year after getting to 4 wins. But let's see if they can get 2 more wins and at least be eligible for a bowl game. But right now they're looking like it may be bigger than that. So we'll see how good they are. And of course, Travis Hunter, touchdown catch, interception, same game, dominant and Heisman frontrunner. That's all I have to say about it. Spoke about it last week. He's showing it week in and week out. He is dominant on both sides of the football. And I just think there's a level of separation when you're that dominant on both sides. Cam Ward, fantastic. Jalen Milroe, we saw how fantastic he is. But a guy doing it on both sides, I really don't see where the conversation is. So we'll see how Colorado season goes. And going into the top 25, the new updated polls for week 6 after the drama and eventful weekend we had here. So as I expected and predicted, Alabama beat Georgia and they moved up to number 1. And then Georgia dropped to 5. I think Georgia's comeback, if anything, saved them from free falling in the polls. They put Michigan at 10, so if Georgia would have gotten blown out, it's no telling where they would have landed. Like if that first half would have just continued in the same way in the second half, Georgia might be in the teens. Because that was just awful. They didn't look like they could beat anybody like that. But that comeback, I think, saved them, and they are still in the top 5. And look, you got a shot. You still got big games this season. You got a shot at Texas in a couple of weeks. You got a shot at Tennessee later in the year. We'll see where those teams are ranked when we get to them. But you got a shot to get back even higher. Particularly in that top 4 to get that bye week in the first round of the college football playoff. But Oregon at 6, we got Penn State at 7, Miami at 8, which is interesting. Very, very close game there with Virginia Tech, as we talked about. Michigan back in the top 10. They have, I believe, found their identity and are sticking to it and making teams play their game. Again, I think the higher you get in competition, it's going to be tougher to do that. But against these teams where they can enforce their will, they're going to do it, and they're going to be a tough team to beat. So they're fighting, and that's a team to watch out for. Ole Miss does drop from 6 to 12 after being upset by Kentucky. And we have LSU, Notre Dame, and Clemson playing fantastic football to round out the top 15. Notre Dame won a big game against Louisville this past week. Close one. That was an upset watch game, and they were able to pull that one off. And then another highlight was Oklahoma here at 19, pulling out a late win. They have a darn good defense. Pulled out a late win there against Auburn, who was very, competitive in that game. And Illinois drops a bit after a loss to Penn State this past weekend. But that wraps up the top 25. Very, very exciting week. And can't wait for more. This week, we have a few games to circle. Obviously, the Georgia-Auburn game. How does Georgia bounce back? All we've been seeing are the highlights from the Georgia-Alabama game and the spin moves and the crazy running around from Jalen, Milroe, and just all this stuff. So is Georgia able to focus back in and beat a team that they should beat by a lot? So a lot to see and hope for in that game. So I have that one circled, of course. And then Missouri at Texas A&M. That should be another road or another test for Missouri. Again, they've looked a little shaky throughout these weeks. Very interested to see how they play Texas A&M in a very tough environment. And then we have Iowa versus Ohio State. Iowa has to go to Ohio State. Iowa is a sneaky team this year, 3-1, I believe, and we'll see how they look against Ohio State, who's just a tough team, obviously, as we expected. And then, as we mentioned, Kansas State at Colorado is another big game to circle. I think this is the time where we see how good Colorado actually is. Playing a big team here. Ranked team, get another shot at a ranked team. But I think if Colorado wins this, they've had some good wins so far this season. But if they win this game, I do think we'll see them sneak into that top 25, and will be a serious team to reckon with for the rest of college football. But those are the big games coming up this week. In week 6, we are moving right along here. A lot of things to look forward to. And that's college football. Moving on to NFL. Again, this was going to be a heavy college football show today. It's just too much exciting news there. And so we'll just do some quick hits with the NFL. The Falcons were able to defeat the Saints in a rivalry game here in Atlanta. That's always exciting to beat the Saints. But good win for the Falcons, who was able to hit a 58-yard field goal to seal the deal. But the offense just still seems out of sync. We have to figure out a way to unlock it. We won that game off of a defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown. But we're not able to get into the end zone at all on the offensive side. So disappointing for in that case or in that regard, but a win is a win, and happy to walk away with one, especially against our in division rivals. And then for the Saints, wondering if this kind of in my pretenders list, I poked at it a little bit. Are the Saints a fluke? They had those 2 explosive weekends of offense, and then again later we saw that they just went against maybe some weak defenses, and then they dropped one to the Falcons just this past week, and then the week before that they lost to the Eagles 15-12. Offense didn't seem as explosive there in that game either. So a team to certainly keep an eye on as well. They look like the best team in the league coming out the gate, and now it's kind of good team, but maybe more so of where expectations were before the season. So we'll see how that plays out. Minnesota, they continue to roll over teams. It did end up being a close game to start, but or I'm sorry, it did end up being a close game at the end. They ended up holding on 31-29, but I remember seeing the score, it was about 21-0 or something crazy. Their offense, unlike the Falcons, are hitting on all cylinders, and they continue to roll out there. And then Tampa Bay destroys the Eagles. Um, the highlight of that game, because it wasn't very close, was the Tom Brady clapback at Baker Mayfield. I guess Baker made a comment, kind of seemed like a jab at Tom Brady for kind of having this high strung out environment. And, Tom Brady had a clap back for that, saying, I thought it was stressful not winning Super Bowls, not winning championships. And so that was interesting. And I thought that was the highlight of the game, because the game itself wasn't very much entertaining. Big win for Tampa Bay, who is now looking like the favorites in the NFC East. They continue to roll. They dropped one against Denver, and have been able to respond since then. So Falcons have them this Thursday, so that'll be an interesting game to see. And the Eagles, again, I think I had them on my pretenders list here. They just seem a little underwhelming. They seem underwhelming. They have those injuries there. Saquon looks great, but I don't think they've put it together all the way as a team and offense yet. So we'll see what they can do with the remaining games of the season. Still early, obviously. So we'll see how that goes. And then the Jets underwhelmed against the Broncos. They lost 10-9. They, speaking of unlocked or locked offenses, very disappointing. Get Aaron Rodgers back. Got all your pieces there, your weapons, and just not looking very competitive right now. Kind of even in their wins. So we'll see if they can get back on track. They were a team that I almost put on my pretenders list last week. I chose to leave them off, but I was kind of looking at their wins, how they looked, and they had a big win against the Patriots, but it's the Patriots, and and then they dropped this one to the Broncos. So if I were to do an updated one this week, they would certainly be on there. But let's see how they do the remaining of the season. Jaden Daniels, they win again, and he is not only looking like the rookie of the year, he is looking like a potential MVP candidate here. He's playing fantastic. He's running the football. He's throwing the football well. And he looks like something or someone to be reckoned with here. And we have the Browns and Deshaun Watson. Is it time's up for Watson out there in Cleveland? You get the feeling from Cleveland and their fans that it is. He's just not playing very well. Looks like a shell of himself, and from the guy we saw in Houston. And obviously that's not what you paid him that big contract for. So very unfortunate for him. But again, the good thing is it's still early in the season and you can still get your bearings under you. But very disappointing for Cleveland right now. They just don't seem like a very good football team, particularly on that offensive side. Kansas City beats the Chargers, but loses Rashee Rice. And it looks like it's going to be for, if not the season, for an extended period of time. That was tough. And then how it happened with Patrick Mahomes running into him, trying to make a hit on a defender. That was unfortunate. And you start to wonder, again, this Kansas City offense wasn't lighting it up in the first place. And then you lose your number one target. And on the heels of Kelsey kind of being uninvolved. He did have a fine game last week, but still like 17-10 win. Like, um, I think that may hurt them a lot, and um, you may need to see about picking someone up, or hopefully you can have some players step up here. Xavier Worthy right now still seems like more of your deep threat, but maybe he can step up and make a take on a bigger role here. And there did seem to be a little breaking news with a rumor of Devontae Adams possibly being available out in Vegas here. I think if you're the Chiefs, that is someone you definitely want to look at, and someone they will probably look at here. I think that's or a place that he would probably enjoy going to. And I think that could put them in good position here, given Patrick Mahomes another big target. Obviously, the rest of the league probably wouldn't want to see that, but that could certainly overfill that void you would have with Rashee Rice going down here. And then finally, Baltimore destroys Buffalo. This game was on my radar. Kind of how I was mentioning with Colorado. I want to see how good Colorado is once they play Kansas State. This was the game for Buffalo for me. They've looked dominant in their 3 games. They're putting up big numbers, and it was pretty unsuspecting. No one was, or I won't say no one. You kind of expect Buffalo to maybe be in the thick of things, but after losing Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs, you just kind of wondered how they'd be this year. And this was a glimpse. I think Baltimore. I mean, I had both of these teams on my contenders list, and I had Baltimore on my contenders list, even though they were 1-2, because I just trusted them. I trusted their defense to get better. I trusted the offense to put it together, and they'd be able to close out these games. And they absolutely destroyed Buffalo. In Buffalo, I wanted to see how they looked against a good team, because while they were 3-0, it wasn't against the fiercest competition either. And they played Baltimore on the road, tough road game, and they put up 10 points and got killed. So are they a fluke? Not ready to say that, but you do have to be able to beat good teams. And so I think that verdict is still out. Clearly still early in the season, 1 game. But they beat up on some teams that could match up with them, and they go to Baltimore, who could match up with them, and they looked a bit inferior there. So we'll keep an eye on both of those teams. And that wrapped up the NFL week. And then quick hits overall. We touched on Devontae Adams all of a sudden becoming available. I do think that would be a potential great look for the Chiefs. I think perfect timing. Rashee Rice goes down, as we talked about, but I'm sure there will be plenty of other options. I don't even know if Kansas City can get him, but just off the top of my head, that seems like it would be a great fit. Obviously, I'm a Falcons fan, so if he wants to come here, great. But doubt we have the room. We paid Kirk Cousins $180 to be here, so we'll see where he lands up. Something to keep our eyes on. I talked about my Bravos, who are currently not looking too good right here. They are in the playoffs playing San Diego, and the big news for us was Chris Sale not being available in this round. Our ace, Triple Crown King here, and he's unable to go for us. Ended up having to start AJ Shaver, and he didn't last very long here. I think while I was recording, I saw Fernando Tatis hit a moonshot for a 2-run homer. Currently 3-0. Hopefully we can make a run here late, but not looking too promising right now. Big loss. Obviously, the Braves have gone through big losses all season, and it's just been one of those resilient years. I'm proud of them for making the playoffs, and I'm going to root for them to the end, but not really expecting them to come in here and be able to beat San Diego. I mean, it's just you can only take so much at the end of the day, but I don't doubt it's. I don't doubt the effort. I don't doubt that they're going to lay it out all on the line here and try to pull this out. But TBD, go Braves. Big NBA news. Cats. Karl Anthony Towns is leaving Minnesota, and he is going for Julius Randle and DiVincenzo out in New York. That was shocking news, and it was a day or so before the media day. So, who knows what conversations may have been going on, but I wonder if it was a shock to him because I didn't hear any rumors about it until it happened. And so that was a big shock and kind of do the value for both teams. I think Cat is a big value for a team wherever he lands. But Julius Randle and DiVincenzo is not a bad pickup for Minnesota at all. Those teams those players are going to bring a physicality and some extra scoring there for Minnesota, which I feel like they could have used in the playoffs last year. And no more Villanova Knicks. I mean, still the Villanova Knicks, but just losing one player there. So unfortunate for that, but I do think landing Karl Anthony Towns for the Knicks is a big deal. That's a big catch there, and you add just some more scoring, taking a bit of the pressure off, taking a lot of the pressure off of Brunson to go out there and do what he did, even though he's clearly capable of it. So big news in the NBA, and media day is here. Seeing all the players and teams in their threads. Saw some great photos and footage of Bronny and LeBron. That was awesome. And so we'll see. Can't wait for NBA season to start. Another addition to the show here. And in other NBA news, on a sad note, Dikembe Mutombo has passed away due to brain cancer. And that was super, super sad news. He was a legend. I don't know if he currently did, but for a while he did live in Atlanta. And I had some guys I went to school with who stayed in the same neighborhood as him, and spoke nothing but highly of him. It seemed like a great guy. Obviously, his impact in the NBA will last forever. But it seems like his impact in the community and just that loving and high energy guy that he was awesome. So we'll always remember Dikembe Mutombo, the finger wag, and just his impact as a person. God bless him and his family. Definitely sad news there. And on the baseball side of things, Pete Rose passed as well. I actually was watching it live, was finished up watching the Braves game against the Mets to get into the playoffs. And the commentator broke the news about it. And it was, tough to hear. Obviously a legend, some controversy behind him, but what he did on the baseball field was historical. And he will go down as a legend and be remembered as a legend for sure. So sad news there. And in more sad news, but not as sad, being that it's not related to death, Derrick Rose calls it a career. Fantastic career for him. And he obviously, we all talked about it. I even talked about it. One of the earlier episodes, maybe the first one, I think. That injury was just an injury heard around the world, and he obviously couldn't bounce back as the same player as he was. But man, I just appreciate the time that he had in the NBA, especially in that time period where he was that dominant. He was unbelievable. There was just nobody who could stop him. He was in his own world, youngest MVP ever, and just completely dominant. I remember him coming down and playing the Hawks in the playoffs, and just I think he had 44 or something in one of the games, and it was just like he was here and everybody else was down here. I mean, he just was on another level, and he would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer had that continued and gone down as one of the best players in the NBA. And now it is probably more of a toss-up just due to injury. It's very unfortunate. But we will always remember Derrick Rose, and it's weird to say it like that. Like he's still here with us, but his career was fantastic. He was a heck of a player, and sad to see him call it a career, but happy. I think he had a 16-year career in total. So that injury did suppress his ability, but he was still able to make a career and had some good seasons after that and was able to contribute to teams. I remember, he had a 50-point game maybe when he was in Minnesota. He had that game-winning shot, and when he was still in Chicago. And he just was when he was with the Knicks, I remember him being a tough stop still. This wasn't prime D Rose at all, obviously with the Knicks, but he was still a great player, and was able to contribute to teams for a long time. So great career for D Rose, man. His number will definitely be held up or hung up in the rafters for Chicago, and best of wishes to him and his endeavors after basketball. And as a stupid fan, I say thank you for all the times that you gave us, and all the times you beat up on my favorite teams. That is everything, folks. Again, an action-packed weekend of college football, and we had some fun NFL games as well here. But obviously, game of the year with UGA and Alabama. We'll be talking about that one for a long time. And we'll see what this next weekend has to bring. It has some big shoes to fill. But I'm sure we'll have some great stuff to talk about next week. Until next time, folks.